It is 6 p.m. I'm going to call to order the August 28th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Woodford County School Board. For roll call, all members are present and in person. And Ms. Hannah Hash, who is one of our seniors this year, is going to lead us in the pledge. And the flag is on the back wall next to the door. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda?
I do have a question.
Yes.
In the past, we have pulled things from the consent agenda at board member request. Is that no longer going to happen?
Any changes to the agenda have to be approved by, it has to have a vote, and you have to have 3 members to make a change to the agenda.
Okay,
That is a standing rule, and I know it's been followed loosely in the past, but it is one of our policies, and I would like to start following our policies and making our board meetings more structured, so we will be following that policy.
Okay, I'm not sure that's a policy, but, I'm not going to argue the point. Then I do have a proposed amendment. I would ask that we pull item D, approved treasurer's report, July financial report, from the consent agenda, and just move it to the regular agenda where it normally appears. That way, if there's any discussion, it can be had there, and someone wouldn't be forced to vote no on the consent agenda over one item out of, 10, 15 items.
So we need a vote on this, correct? Okay. So are you making a motion?
I do.
Okay, so motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Ms. McCowan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The motion fails 2-3. Any other proposed amendments to the agenda?
I have a question too, just because I'm not sure. But the contracts under the consent agenda, I have a conflict with one, so I don't know if it needs to be pulled out separately or how that works, because like Ms. Springate said, I don't want to have to abstain.
Did you ask about the conflict before?
I didn't. I
Okay.
work for UK Healthcare, and one of the items is the contract with UK Healthcare for the athletic trainer. So.
Okay, yeah, I think the appropriate thing to do then would be to make a motion to vote on that separately from the rest of the consent agenda so that you can abstain from the vote.
So would that be moved then into the regular agenda, or just moved separate from items A through K on the consent agenda?
I believe you would just move it separate from items A through K and hold a separate vote on that so that you can absent yourself from that part of the vote.
Okay. And is that the same thing? Do we need a vote on that as well, or?
Yes,
Okay.
you would need a motion
Okay.
for that as well.
So I assume that's your motion, Ms. McCowan.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Brickler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. So we're going to move just the UK contract, just the athletic trainer contract, separate from item F, and we will have, after the regular consent agenda, we'll take a vote on the athletic trainer. Okay, any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to our superintendent's report. That's you, Superintendent.
First off, I want to
First off, I want to turn my mic on and then welcome Mr. Connor Brumley on board. We're glad to have you. Ms. Hannah left some big shoes for you to fill. I think you're capable, though. I think everyone feels you're pretty capable to do that. But welcome aboard, and we're glad to have you, Connor. Proud to have you, actually. We've had a great opening day with all of our staff meeting, great opening day speaker, a great breakfast. The breakfast was so good, it ran us a little bit long on our program. We were a little overzealous with our agenda, and we've made mental notes of that as to how to make it work a little smoother next year. We've had a great first 7-8 days of school now. Things have gone very smoothly. You look at other districts, and we have been blessed, very blessed with the start to our school year so far, and just routines every day in the classroom. We're seeing it, and just getting everything back rolling. I know the middle school, they're super pumped, and the high school under new leadership, they're super pumped. They had a great senior sunrise last Thursday, brought a few donuts over. These guys got to enjoy those, and we had a really good time. And thank you for the invitation, for coming, or for allowing me to come. So it was a little bit of an early morning, but I figured if you guys could do it, surely I could do it. But we had a very good time with that. Roof repairs from the storm damage, and guys, we just got these released to us, and this is to everyone. The storm in December, we've been kind of struggling with insurance to get our payment for that. So we got that released on Wednesday afternoon. So that's why they were attached a little later. But we really need to try to get moving on that. And that comes, I think, with just a small amount of contribution from the district to repair all those roofs. One of them is a complete roof. I think it may be south side's a complete roof. So just moving through that, we've been very fortunate to be able to get that and get it moved. We want to try to get that done before bad weather gets up with us on that too. State Fair, had a chance to go to State Fair and watch our kids present last week, and it was awesome. I'd never seen that before. Had a chance to go see that. Met several parents, just a really good time to go down, see our kids present. I know we had the Probus boys present their pigs, and we had Miss Ricketts, I cannot remember her name, she was a sixth grader over at middle school, but she won third place with her goat on the evening before I went down. So we were very successful over there. Excited to go and see that. And our Portrait of a Learner, we have, I know Miss Tracy just smiles, and Miss Bailey excited because we've had so much positive feedback on our Portrait of a Learner from social media, from emails, news media. It's been really good to see that feedback, and just to know what it's going to do for our students in our classrooms. Over at Northside, they've already kicked off a huge project. I think Ms. Glass was a member of the little acting out piece where we introduced what we were going to try to do for Midway there, the city of Midway. So the mayor was there, we just got great things going, and that kind of raised the bar for everyone else. So we've seen people just really, the kids are embracing it, and when you get the kids talking about it in schools, that's when rubber starts really hitting the road. So great work with that, guys. Y'all, a year worth of work to prepare that, and then to roll it out with just across the state. We've got a lot of great feedback. So just again, before I close, I want to thank the team. I want to thank everybody, all of our administrators, our staff, and our students as well for coming in and having such a great year, great start to our school year. So, been a good one.
All set? Okay. All right. So next on the agenda are our recognitions. We have our 2023 Governor's Scholars and our Governor's School for the Arts. So Ms. Bailey is going to do those introductions.
Hello. Okay, so I scoped it out. I think over here by the bookcase is going to be the best location. Okay, so you all, when you hear your names called, you can just come one-on-one or one by one down over here to the bookcase. So the Governor's Scholars Program is a summer residential program for outstanding high school students in Kentucky who are rising seniors. The program's mission is to enhance Kentucky's next generation of civic and economic leaders, and it originated in 1983. It is a huge honor for a student to be accepted into the Governor's Scholars Program. It is very prestigious and is very something to really be admired. So we had 9 students get accepted, and we also had 2 alternates, and I will call them off one by one. Okay, so first we had Mr. Connor Brumley. We had Miss Evelyn Goins, Hannah Hash, Joshua Jaton, Emerson Lavin, Madeline Lovelace, Elijah Martin, Grace Taylor, and Sydney Williams. Congratulations, you all. Okay, sorry about that. My notes got out of order. All right, next we're going to highlight our Governor School for the Arts participants. This is very similar to GSP, except for it has an arts focus, of course. So a little bit about this program. Every summer, professional artists and educators guide over 200 of Kentucky's finest young artists through 3 weeks of incredibly intense and incredibly fun arts instruction. For a solid 3 weeks, the students live, breathe, eat, and sleep the arts. It's a thrilling, often life-changing experience as they meet new friends, explore their creativity, and discover new things about who they are and who they can be in the future. There are 9 different disciplines in which a student can participate. It's architecture and design, creative writing, dance, drama, film and photography, instrumental music, musical theater, visual art, and vocal music. This year, we had 3 students participate. Miss Anna Adkins, Miss Taylor Brown, and Miss Peyton Whitaker.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Moving on, we have our high school update project. So I'll call Mr. Ratliff up to the podium.
Before Mr. Ratliff gets started, I'd also ask him, he has something coming up that we didn't get the paperwork in in time. He still, I don't think, has the paperwork, but it's to do with our new track and field. And Ms. McCallum, you were at that meeting when we talked about moving those things, so they have the estimate for that, and then we will have to approve that. So they don't have that ready yet, but he knows about what it's going to be. So I asked him to speak on that.
Yeah, so we were shooting to have that to you all this month. We got pricing back from contractors. It was more expensive than we'd anticipated, and we realized that the design could be changed. The first design that was put out required a lot of import to be brought in to fill that area up to the elevation it was shown. So we made some revisions and put it back out. So that it'll save tens of thousands of dollars. So it cost us a little more time as far as getting that to you all. So we can't wait another month for them to order the turf material and so on and it not delay the project. So I would ask that we'll get together today and tomorrow and try to project that date that you all could see if it would work with you to do a special called meeting to look at it. It can wait till next month. It just would cause a delay in ordering the material and when it would arrive. So as soon as we know, we'll set a goal date in the next day or two of maybe towards next week sometime, the end of next week, to see if you're all available to do a quick meeting. So.
Thank you.
If you have, I was going to say, if you have a good idea of when you might be able to get that together, I mean, if you want, I don't mind if we schedule a meeting now, and then that way it's already on the books. Nobody has to do emails or get their calendars out.
Set a date.
Or not, that's okay.
We could, I would hate to set it I need some input from them first to know, but I can have a request by tomorrow as far as what day. I just don't want to schedule one and then have to reschedule again.
Gotcha.
As far as the current high school progress, if you've been by, I'm sure you're seeing a big change really quick. things are moving along good. We've had some weather, but we're at a stage now where the impact of weather days is not as tremendous as it was before. So we have parts of the building that are completely under roof, and we have parts of the building that are going under roof. So it is progressing very quickly. I always mess this up. Okay. So, current project or total project cost, same as always. This won't change. The $73,066,931.50. The total construction cost to date has not changed since the previous meeting. It's still at $60,998,309.17. The total that we've billed to the owner to date is $20,305,287. That's through July. There will be a payment coming in the next few days for the month of August. Currently sets at 33% through the month of July. I don't know. It'll be several million for the month of August. I would guess it'll be poking around the 37 to 40%. The original substantial completion date was October 1st of 24. It still sets at 11/4/24, same as last meeting. This is a contingency log that has not changed either. Some of the items we'll bring to you in that special called meeting, of course, will impact this. That would be for phase two. Phase two, there has been nothing changed with the contingency so far. There has been no change orders. That's just the sequence we go through each time. There's a side-by-side of from July to August. That picture will fool you a little bit. If you'll notice on the left-hand side, that E-wing, the dark gray slab, it almost looks like it went backwards, but what you're seeing on the right-hand side is the second floor slab with walls going vertical to the roof. They've actually, some of the pictures you'll be able to see, you can probably see where they've started installing the steel joists. So that wing shooting out at those apartments there will be under roof in the next couple weeks. You can also see that the area F going up to area D is now under decking. You'll start seeing roof go on that in the next few weeks as well. So some significant changes if you look at those two pictures in the last 30 days. Some items that have been completed in the last 30 days would be the gym slab in area A is complete. Area D second floor slab is 90% complete. Under slab MEPs at the auditorium are complete. Second floor CMU is complete at area E. Roof installation at area C is complete. We started the brick veneer at area C. I've got some pictures of that. You cannot see it from the highway, so I think you all really enjoy getting to see what the exterior of the building is starting to look like. Roof joists have commenced at area E. Rough grading and faculty student parking lot is ongoing. The metal panel Z-furring is complete at area C. You'll see that the entire C wing is yellow. I promise that's not permanent. It's going to look much better in the coming weeks. Spray foam, that's the yellow covering you're seeing, is complete at area C. Light gauge trusses and decking at area F are complete. The roof joist decking at area F is complete. MEP rough-in is ongoing in area C, E, F, and D, and site grading and storm drainage are ongoing. The 30-day look ahead, the masons will continue stone and brick at area C. They'll start installing windows in area C. They'll pour the flat slab areas at area B, the auditorium, so that's kind of like surrounding the auditorium, and then the auditorium slopes, that will be the next pour. They'll complete the joist and decking at the E-wing roof. They'll start the roof installation at E-wing, continue MEP rough-in in areas C, E, F, and D, continue CMU at the cafeteria and gymnasium area, start roof installation at area F, And roof, I say roof, you're seeing it looks like there's a roof, but that's just the metal decking. They have not started the roof yet. Complete Area D second floor slab. They only like about 10% from finishing that second floor slab. They'll start spray foam at E-wing. I believe they actually started that today. Continue site and storm drainage. Complete roof erection at Area D. And they'll start the precast wall installation at the storm shelter. So there's a picture from the back side of the C-wing. In that picture, you can see the cast stone at the bottom. It's roughly 3'4" high is what you're seeing there, the gray area. We've got some up-close pictures as well. You can see over on the left-hand side, that's your gymnasium. To the right of that is your cafeteria area. So there's your brick that's going up on the C-wing. I think it looks extremely good, and I hope you all agree. It's going to be a great looking building. This is an overview from Area E. That's the steel joist for the roof I was talking about earlier. Last month that was just a slab. Now the walls are complete, topped out, and they are starting to install the roof joist. There's another angle where you can see kind of over E and C. There's a front view. That's your admin area. That's kind of where that'll be the main entrance, that Area D. There's just another angle of the front of the building. There's kind of a look down in to see what's going on. It'll get harder and harder to see the progress being made as it goes vertical, but we'll continue to give you aerial views and interior views so you can see what's going on at this meeting. There's your gym and cafeteria. Those are very tall, very large walls. So there's a lot of progress being made on them, but it doesn't change daily as far as similar to the rest of the building. Those are the tallest, largest walls in the entire building. So there you can kind of see your auditorium is taking shape there on the left-hand side, and that gym where you see the label, that is literally the center of the gym floor. There is the student parking lot that's complete as far as with stone. They'll be moving over to the left for the faculty parking, but there's been a lot of progress made in that area. Before long, it won't look like a bomb went off out there, so making a lot of progress. So here's some just really the majority of the building looks the same on the inside for the most part, so just kind of pick some random locations to give you pictures. D is the admin area. Of course, there's going to be a lot of walls that are installed in there. It's really open right now, but it is under decking. The middle picture is in C-wing, and that's just a view of the marketing lab. Every room in C-wing pretty much looks like this. They're working on the MEP above ceiling rough in at the moment. And then your Area D corridor, that's kind of when you walk through the main entrance and through the lobby, that is looking all the way down the corridor where it'll branch off to like the C-wing and E-wing, and it goes straight back into the media center. There is kind of a view at the deck of the media center. I always like throwing, it's a huge room, and it's very impressive in my opinion. I love throwing pictures of that in there. So the F, the Commons first and second floor, is basically my back to the media center on the left, and that's looking, gives you a view of the first and second floor at that area. And then just another angle from the second floor looking down into like the media center and the corridor. And then that's that picture of F, rear entrance, and the exit between wing E and C is basically, I'm standing in the same location and looking at the back of the building. You can see the brick and stone going up there on the side of E-wing. Middle picture is the second floor. That's the science classrooms. And then the science labs are to the left there, the area that you don't see poured. That's that 10% I was talking about pouring next week. So here's the track and field. All perimeter drainage is installed. Rough grading is completed. The interior curb sits at about 80% complete. They have not started, if you've noticed down on the far end, they have not began the installation of that radius because this PR that's coming to you will affect what curb goes in there because of the changes. So that's why we're talking about needing a decision soon, because they've almost got to a point where they can't go farther without potentially having to rework based on what decision is made. Here is the schedule update. Again, like always, feel free to pick through every inch of that if you want. The important part is the end. And I started highlighting this because I know there's a lot of dates on there. So you'll see that the original substantial completion was October 1st. Right now it's tracking for October 18th, and contractually we have until November 4th. So roughly 2 weeks ahead. Again, I always say it can change any week. It can get better, it can get worse, but we like having that cushion, especially with over a year left to go in the project. So, any questions?
Will you remind me, the final completion date, is that just construction, or is that also all furniture, all equipment, everything like in the building?
So that would be our final completion is always 30 days after substantial completion. So we would coordinate as far as when the owner's furniture and all that stuff is coming in the building. We are contractually required to have all of ours finished on our end by that date.
Okay.
Some of that really isn't up to me,
Right.
as far as when you're all in, but it's up to us to kind of coordinate it and make sure you are in,
Okay.
I have just one quick question. As a reminder, the difference between the construction cost and the project cost, those are the architect fees and things like that?
Yeah.
That are not,
That's all the soft costs. That's the
Okay.
furniture, the architect's fee, the construction manager fee, the special inspector. It's all listed on the BG1, what ends up making that 70+ million.
got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Remember about a year ago this past week, it was like 6 shovels and a mound of dirt?
Oh, yeah.
And this is what we've got, so thank you.
I was telling
It's-
Mr. Atkins before the meeting, it's kind of wild, you think this project did start last September, but concrete and the building portion did not start going up until the end of January of this year. So if you think about it like that, it's been a substantial change from January to September.
It's going to be beautiful.
Yep.
So excited. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. Okay, next is our good news report. So, Mr. Brumley, I'll put you on the spot. You want to go first or you want to go last?
I don't mind to start us off.
Well, go right ahead.
Well, school is officially back in session, which is great. I think it's been a really seamless transition into the school year. Definitely looking forward to another gold standard year here across the district. From a student perspective, the Portrait of a Learner, I love it. I think the district's doing a really good job on that. I love seeing it around all the different buildings, and I think it really stands a testament to who we are as a school district. So thank you, board members, for working hard on that, and the rest of the district staff. For the high school sports, girls soccer won most recently against Mercer County. They're having a great season. Boys soccer also won recently. Volleyball, the girls golf team, boys golf team, we are just doing real good in sports right now. And our first home football game after the cancellation of last Friday's football game is this Friday, August 28th. So make sure you show out, be proud for them. But we're doing really great, and I know.
What time is that football game?
7:30.
7:30.
7:31. Yes, 7:31. So, yes.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say,
Oh,
go ahead, Mr.
okay.
Brickley.
Yeah, so I recently had the opportunity to sit down briefly with the First Five Bluegrass, which is a collaborative team from Woodford County, Jessamine, Franklin, and Anderson counties. They focus on early childhood development and pre-readiness for kindergarten. And so just learning more about what they're doing to get our youngest students and children in the community ready to enter the school system. And so I'm really impressed. And they got a lot of stuff going on. A couple things. They were actually instrumental in bringing the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to Woodford County. So I know a lot of people heard about that when it was announced. And so anybody from birth to age 5 gets free books from that program. So really important. Also, they have upcoming events between the Woodford County Library and Housing Authority. So really, it was great to get some information. Thanks, Kim Johnson, back there. I see you. So sharing that information, and just want to give a shout out to that group because it sounds like they're doing a lot of great stuff. Also, really briefly, I know some other people are going to mention it, but Distinguished Young Women competition was recently held, and I got to go with that. My wife was working behind the scenes a little bit, and I got to take my daughters, and they were just in awe of the talent and ability that the young women were showing during that competition. Just the interviews and the speeches and the talent and everything that they were doing was really impressive. So definitely wanted to give a shout out, and told my daughters, like, that's scholarship money that you can go for there. So we're all about that. So yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, Ms. Glass.
I kind of have good news, bad news. I guess the bad news is that it was really hot at the high school last week, I hear. But I just wanted to just give a shout out, to our maintenance team. I heard they worked all weekend to try to get everybody up and running. And also just a shout out to the students and staff for with going through that. I was here last week at open house and it was a little warm. So just a shout out to Mr. Green and his maintenance team for getting them all up and running.
I think we've had a really successful opening couple weeks. I wanted to say an extra thanks to our Deeper Learning Committee, Mr. Adkins, and everybody who has put this information out there. I think regionally, statewide, it's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of good attention, and it's just one more thing that I'm proud to be associated with. So thank you all very, very much. Very excited to see how that develops throughout the year at all the different grade levels. It's a wonderful program, I believe. That's all that I have today. Ms. McCowan?
I think a couple of the things that I was going to mention have already been mentioned, so I'll just say that I appreciated being able to participate in opening day. I hadn't been to anything like that before. I wasn't able to stay the whole time, but it was really nice to see all of the entire staff throughout all the district together in one place, and got to see a lot of new faces and lots of old faces, and just excited for a great new school year. So.
When I'm at the end, I don't really have a lot left to say because all the sports and activities and fun things have been taken. But I will say, I think that it's been a great start to the year. I think our parents and students and teachers and staff should absolutely be commended. And the good news is we do have a holiday weekend coming up soon, so hopefully everybody can rest and recharge, and if they're ill, feel better, and if not, get out and enjoy. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Springate. And I guess on behalf of the entire board, welcome, Mr. Brumley. We're super excited to have you. I think we've said it a couple times, but we're very happy to have you on board here. Okay, next up is our instructional equity report, Mr. Asher.
Good evening. So I do have visuals to go with my presentation this evening. I'll take you through this. And just like many of you mentioned, back to school time, here are a number of pictures you may have seen before because they've been part of Ms. Bailey's social media posts that she's done. Just to highlight, and this would be actually all 3 levels that you see here about back to school. So we are actually in day 12 already of student days. Time flies when you're having fun, Mr. Atkins. But then also the 1 day, so 13 overall when you consider the work day for the teachers, which is timely. You get in for, at that point, what would have been 11 days, kind of assess where your students are and just the overall needs, and then have some planning time. And also, Ms. Bailey put out some pictures about that and how that went, so I know that was well received by staff.
Yeah, we've had some really good feedback on that from staff. They've really appreciated that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
So back to school, I've heard the word routines also go along with that, or expectations, and of course equally important are the relationships, and so staff has certainly been working on those these first 12 days. Before moving forward with more about this year, I want to look back to our summer learning. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but want to review some more specific details and data. So we'll start with all three levels. Elementary learning, summer learning staffs. Here you have the numbers of those and some great team pictures. Since we've transitioned to doing this all at the middle school, we've talked about this multiple times over the years. It's really neat to see the collaborative effort from all four elementaries coming together for the benefit of all students, regardless of their elementary. So they really do form a bond and a team over the course of the summer. Here are some numbers as far as elementary goes. You can see the table there, the bottom left, the heavy focus on our primary grade students, K1 and 2, is where most of the attendees come from. And I was pleased to see that they held pretty strong, 163 to 159 in July. So vast majority of students returned for that second session in July. There also is a breakdown of the cost. Most of the cost going towards staff. Now, I will also say that bus drivers are lumped in here, which and down to transportation. That would also include transporting middle school students. We did have to spend a little extra this time. You see the one-time purchase for materials and curriculum. It had been a while since we had fully renewed what's called Lit Camp. And you'll see this more, as well as we had not purchased a tangible resource for math, and so our math team selected one that we purchased to use. So there's the total cost in terms of elementary. Now, as I mentioned last week, we do have a general fund budget, and we kind of work from both of those because June, we got to pay out and close for June, and then looking forward to July to pay from FY24. Here's a little bit more as far as, I won't read all these off, but just information for you in terms of how elementary is structured, from the schedule to transportation to the curriculum that I just noted. The Summer Scholars Math program is what I mentioned there as far as the one-time cost. Also, I've mentioned this a couple times, our partnership with Pearson, it's known as the Kentucky Equity-Based Tutoring program, was very successful. And so there's a rundown of what they provided in terms of the staff who were tutors and interventionists, as well as resources, that targeted reading intervention, whole number foundation, so on and so forth, that we continue to have access to over the course of this summer. We will likely re-up with them for next summer as long as all the details work out. I do have some data for you there, and also if you don't have the live version of this, you can click on that where it says data for students in intervention. But overall, we did use this Ames Web Plus mentioned there to do a spring benchmark just as we were getting out of school, and then again at the end of the program, and you'll see there the vast majority, nearly 62%, with some level of growth. It's hard to make significant growth in that amount of time, but given the time, they use that to full efficiency to get some growth out of those students. And I also want to note that particularly let me back up to our daily schedule, it's more than just the intervention and instruction piece, what we provide for these kids. It's just the structure, first and foremost. Obviously, time to socialize, be with their friends, on top of the learning that they get. And then, let me also go into enrichment days that you see here. So we've done different things over the past several years. We could do a little bit more with some of the funds from Pearson, as well as WEEF. They had a bouncy day with snow cones back in June, the end of the first session. And then this one was pretty neat, the Bluegrass Railroad trip that they got to go on. And as it says there, most students had never been on a train ride, which I guess doesn't surprise me. But I was pretty impressed with the looks of the interior of the train cars there. We did pay a little bit more and make sure we were in the air-conditioned cars. The director had asked for that. So good enrichment trip for the students. Moving ahead to middle school. Middle school and high school are lesser in number, and I guess that could be a good thing, certainly, because those are more about recovering failing grades. And as you see there, just 6 students needed to attend to recover failing grades. But then on top of that, identified 8 students participated in small intervention groups over the course of the summer. Follows the same schedule as elementary. Different in the funding for that is that it's used, middle school's ESS funds, extended school service funds, are banked and used for their summer learning program. And again, also the transportation, as I mentioned, of course, breakfast and lunch provided. And then high school, Dr. S put this together. Students enrolled in the upper left, and then credits recovered in the upper right is what I'll go to first. That number is significantly down, but again, that's a good thing. There are fewer students that need to recover credits than just last summer. Oh no, it only gives me an option to update now, Josh. We don't want to go through that. All right. Oh, where was I? So like I was saying, that's a positive thing that's a lesser number. Going down the far right there, 15 students jumped a grade level, meaning they got the appropriate number of credits to go from freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, junior to senior. And then, as I mentioned, I think I talked about this one last month, we were able to have that small graduation in here for those 3 students that achieved that mile marker. A little bit more in terms of numbers and budget for high school. Here's the rundown of that. Oh, and there's also notes about the decrease in numbers, the 2 bullets on the left-hand side. And then there's your cost breakdown. The structure for high school is different than elementary and middle in that they do 2 solid weeks of in-person instruction in June, and then essentially it's virtual after that point to finish up via Edgenuity over the course of July. And so at that point, you don't need that direct instruction that it calls for in phase 1. So a lesser amount for phase 2 where they are just monitoring virtually and setting up meets as needed. Moving ahead now. Well, I guess I'll first stop there. Any questions about our summer learning programs? All right, I'll go ahead to look forward to 23-24. We always use the phrase big rocks. So those are our big initiatives or foundational pieces that we want to work on this year. And then at the bottom, I always highlight this for our principals, for our deans, for our new teachers, in fact, when we did new teacher orientation. There's a lot of other things that we focus on. They may not be big rocks, but they certainly are things that we support moving forward. So I'm gonna go through the 2 big rocks today. All right, Portrait of a Learner, which has been mentioned several times, and these are actually slides from opening day with maybe 1 or 2 more, just to reiterate some points. But it's always important to revisit the why. I'm very much a believer in that collective vision for our students, that it emphasizes there, not only for our school staff, but our entire community. That word competencies is going to keep coming up. So it's that set of competencies which are articulated in the logo, and then a foundational tool that should shape all school design work. So I went over this on opening day, how we got here, just the year, well, over a year process. Not only were we working on this, but as you can see on the timeline points here, our deeper learning teachers working on their craft and what their path was for deeper learning and piloting those strategies in their classroom. But as many have noted, we're very proud of our product we've got so far. Moving forward, for this year, we really wanted to take it from the abstract of this logo to the concrete. What are we doing with it? So we're going to learn, launch, look is our motto there for what we're doing this year. And so learn simply means learn the competencies and the characteristics. So as I mentioned on opening day, every classroom has this poster to help you learn those competencies and characteristics. Every school has a banner like the one you see back there, and we actually will be ordering more. Stickers throughout as far as just the logo. So we want to learn the language, certainly. Launch the language in schools and classrooms. So that means not only to learn it, but to use it. And I went 1 too far. So all of our staff will have access to these digital icons that they can put on their presentations, on their assignments and activities to say, well, this particular one is going to work on collaboration and problem solving. So to show that connection and launching the language in their classrooms. And then finally, look through the Portrait of a Learner lens to find ways to incorporate these competencies. This is going to be one, Ms. Tracy and I were just meeting today about planning our upcoming meetings. We got a principals meeting, we have a deeper learning team meeting, we have what we call a coaches meeting for our deans. We're going to look at this, we're going to use this one in particular to make this one more concrete, and how do we look through that lens to apply it in our classrooms. Moving forward, okay, so that's just year one. We do need to come up with a plan for next year and beyond, a 3 to 5 year plan, and here's just a few things that we'll be doing. That'll be a charge of our deeper learning team as we go throughout the year, but more in depth, system of measurement of those competencies, continued effort on the instructional design and delivery, and then of course the community piece. The other big rock I'd like to specify a little bit more on is PLC. You've heard that term for a number of years, and I think I had mentioned in this report before how we really invested in what I call a big ticket training back in June. So based on our June 1st and 2nd PLC training, here's some things that we needed to reestablish, revisit, and retrain. It had been a number of years since we had done a formal PLC training from an outside vendor, Solution Tree, and so we brought them in, very well attended with teams from each school, and we narrowed it down to these 4 things of what we want to have a renewed focus on. And then also, it was really organic, and I always appreciate those efforts about how these additional things came out from those school teams. And I'm going to talk more about this next month because there is actual policy about our grading, and I'll explain that next month. But standards-based grading in grades 3 through 5 to measure and report mastery of standards over the course of the year. Again, this came from the teachers that were involved in this training, as well as the principals. Like, we've gotten this far, why don't we just take this next step? It's something we've been talking about for several years, so now we're going to pilot this process this year. That's a practice that has already been in place for as long as I can remember for K through 2, but then want to take that on to the upper levels of elementary. And then also a different assessment platform at the middle school in particular to support that creation of common assessments that's highlighted there about PLC Right. So I'll be updating you on both of those things in the future. As far as equity, again, not one of those things that we call a big rock, but a continued area of focus and where we're going for this year. I had reported to you all how we met before leaving for the summer, and what this pie graph shows over here is we have 3 main goal areas that we established when we started all this work. And my question to them was, which one should we focus on most this year? And overwhelmingly said, increase all stakeholders' opportunities to develop empathy, respect, appreciation for differences in backgrounds, cultures, and or other human characteristics. So that from that one, I then asked them what are potential strategies and actions we can use, and they came up with quite a few. So this is our launching point. We'll take that back to those school level teams, what I said we're trying to reinforce this year to narrow that down even more specifically. And then finally, every step of the way is the purpose of our Portrait of a Learner from the time they enter our building to the time they leave. That's why, and I believe I had also mentioned this, we stayed away from Portrait of a Graduate because we didn't want to go right to 12th grade. We wanted it to be a learner so that we're supporting them every step of the way. And another shout out to Ms. Bailey for coming up with this graphic here. So that concludes my report. Any questions on anything that I've covered this evening?
Questions? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Asher.
All right.
Appreciate it. Next is our opportunity for audience or public comment. There is none, so we will move into the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the athletic trainer contract in item F?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. All in favor? Aye.
Are we going to have discussion?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I have some questions. You want to go first?
Sure. Let's see. I guess I think it would be helpful, and what we've done in the past is have the superintendent go through the consent agenda items and just kind of lay them out and speak to them. So I guess my request would be to do that, and then as things come up, different board members might have questions about different items.
So I don't recall that ever happening in one of our meetings. I would say, again, did everybody here have an opportunity to review the agenda and the attachments? Did you review the agenda and the attachments?
I reviewed all of them that were
Okay.
attached timely. The ones that were attached today, I didn't really get a chance to review those
That's
ones.
fine. Did you ask any questions that you had?
Well, we're at the
Okay.
meeting, which is the forum to ask the questions.
No, the consent agenda is supposed to be approved at the meeting with all the questions being answered coming into the meeting. Certainly, if something came up while we're discussing things, that's fine, but you should not be waiting until the meeting to present your questions.
I guess we
For
just,
the very first time. We have discussed this several times, and I do think that it's important for people to be able to answer your questions wholly, to know what they are ahead of time so that they can prepare, or just answer them so that we don't have to spend time at the meeting going through all of them.
and I guess what I would say is I disagree. We have a board meeting, and we have agendas, and we have items that are required to be voted on by the board. And so before voting on items, I think having discussion is a good thing. I think that is why we have meetings. Otherwise, we wouldn't be bothering to have meetings. It's required by statute. And when you're going through some of these items, for instance, you know, I have submitted questions early. They aren't answered. I've submitted questions at meetings. They aren't answered. And so I think having a discussion, for instance, one of the contracts, it's not recommended or not recommended. So if it's not recommended and it's not recommended, what is it?
And I would say for that type of question, clearly, that's an oversight in the person that did
Correct,
it.
and so that's why we would
that
discuss
can-
it.
That can be remedied way before the meeting, to reach out to the person that submitted the form to say, hey, I think you forgot something, because that's a clear just oversight, in my opinion.
And again, there are many, many items throughout the agenda like that. I think it's worthy to discuss things.
consent-
We have authorized payment for certain things, like one of the contracts I think we should probably discuss, just as a board, because I think it's good to check in and to get everyone's opinions,
So,
and the only way we can
Mr.
do that is in
Morgan,
an open meeting.
Can you please describe for us the difference between a consent agenda and a regular agenda item?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, generally, for a consent agenda, you don't do item-by-item discussion. I think if item-by-item discussion is wanted, the method to do that is either make a motion to pull it out, or during the agenda-setting process, ahead of when the agenda is posted, you can make a request to the superintendent and the chair to have a certain item included in a particular place on the agenda. The board policy, as it sits now, the superintendent, in consultation with the board chair, sets the agenda, and then that's the method to adjust that process, and then by a vote of the board as a body.
And with all due respect, that doesn't happen in Woodford County now. I asked for an item to be pulled so that we would be able to discuss it, and there weren't 3 votes for us even to have discussion about the finances, which concerns me.
Well,
And again, I think in
that
a
is
public
the rule,
meeting, we
though.
have the right to have discussion about agenda items. I think it's clear. Thank you.
If you would like to move something from the consent agenda, which our board attorney just advised us what the difference between a consent agenda and a regular agenda item are, then you are more than able to do that. To make a change to the agenda, as we've discussed, per our board policy, it does take 3 votes, yes, to change a board agenda item.
I understand, and
Okay,
sadly, we don't
so-
have 3 votes to change the
Well, we
agenda.
don't.
However, we do have an agenda,
But
and an
Mrs.
agenda can
Springate-
be discussed at board meetings.
Mrs.
That's the
Springate,
purpose of having a board meeting, is to have that discussion.
When we have a vote, part of your responsibility as a board member is to accept that vote. The vote was taken.
I'm asking for discussion, not a vote.
The vote was taken to not have that item moved out from the consent agenda. As Mr. Morgan has just explained to us, a consent agenda is not the same as a regular agenda item. So if we need to have discussion, and if you have not submitted your questions ahead of time, if you have not received those answers to the questions ahead of time, then yes, in a regular agenda, we can pull those and we can talk about those. And we do go through line item by line item, the regular agenda item. That has happened at every single board meeting, every single one. The consent agenda is different.
And
So
again,
we
with
have-
all due
We have
respect-
voted on pulling the finance report, which I know you want to have pulled. It was voted no.
We're
So
at-
we need to move on.
Ms. McHale, I'm asking to have discussion about a contract. It has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Mrs.
I think it's
Springate.
clear in a board meeting, items on an agenda can be discussed by board members, and I'm not sure why we would spend 20 minutes debating whether we should discuss items as a board. I think the perception is that we rubber stamp things because we don't discuss them.
That is
I
not
think
a
the perception
perception.
is that we don't ask questions and we don't have discussion and we can't speak as
Mr.
a
Warren,
board
once
except
again,
at this open meeting. I can't have a
can you
discussion with these
please
5 people
educate us?
except at this meeting. And so I would like to
Can
have a
you-
discussion about this contract. We approved paying for the LGC staffing
Mrs.
agency
Springate.
last year for
Mrs.
custodial
Springate.
and food service support. I would like to
Mrs.
discuss that.
Springate, did you submit this question ahead of time? Was this contract attached to the agenda on Wednesday?
With all due respect,
Was
I
this
have, with all due
contract-
respect, most agendas come out on Fridays, and there were
No,
attachments made
they do
today
not.
to the agenda.
Mrs.
Today, we
Springate,
had attachments made.
that is false.
Number one,
It is
but it's
false.
time-stamped.
Wednesday.
Look at the agenda, it's
Mrs.
time-stamped.
Springate, please.
So, again, all I'm saying
The
is,
agenda
why
is
can't we have
fine.
discussion in an
Mrs.
open meeting?
Springate.
Submitting things by email just circumvents the process of the board being able to have a
The
discussion.
agenda is posted every month. By the time that it is, we are obligated to post it by the Wednesday before the meeting, and that is when it is posted. There are occasionally items that are added afterwards if they are important enough that they need to be added for discussion or for voting for an emergency reason. This agenda was was published. All the attachments, as far as I saw, for the consent agenda were added on Wednesday. We should be asking questions like this ahead of time so that you can come to a board meeting prepared to make a vote. That is the point of the board meeting. All of the information that is on the agenda, every attachment, every agenda item is available to anybody in the community at any point to review themselves. We are not keeping information from anybody. We are not trying to stifle anybody's voices. What we are trying to do, and what I spoke about last month, was having a more productive, helpful school board that does not engage in these arguments and these repetitive, not letting things go and just creating divide in the community for that purpose only. So,
Ms. McHale, I
with that,
disagree 100%.
I am
The
asking-
board meeting should be discussion, and having a discussion is not an argument. That is not being hateful, that's not being negative.
You're
I don't
correct.
raise my voice, I don't name call, I don't go outside the meetings and talk about things or post things. I simply feel like, as a board, we are spending the public's money, the taxpayers' money. We spent money on this custodial agency. We got discussion about it last year. It was approved. We have to go back and look at things after the fact. The only time that the 5 of us as a board can have discussion and can talk about things is in this open meeting. The lawyers have been very clear, the new ones
sure.
have been very clear that they don't want the emailers. They don't want me emailing 5 people. They don't want 5 people emailing.
That is
They think
correct.
it could potentially create a open meetings violation if perhaps 2 people accidentally forgot and replied and there was a
Absolutely
conversation.
correct.
So out of an abundance of caution, I'm following that advice and asking that we please have discussion about items on the agenda. I understand that you have now moved the treasurer's report from the regular agenda where it has been for the past 12 years that I've been here to the consent agenda. I didn't notice that last month. I do notice that this month. I asked for it to be moved. As a courtesy, anytime any board member in the past on this board has asked for something to be pulled, that has happened. I understand we're no longer doing that, but I don't think having an item on a consent agenda means means that board members are prohibited from discussing it. And again, to be clear, the only time the 5 of us can have a discussion is in an open meeting. If it doesn't happen in these meetings and people can go back and watch, then all of those votes happened without a single discussion. All of those votes happened without a single follow-up. And I learn things from other members as we have discussions.
There
And
is
so I
nothing
feel like it's
saying that
important
you
for
are
us to
not
do
allowed
that.
to talk to another board member. You may not correctly email the entire board and engage in conversations, but you may talk to whomever you want to at all points during the month. And again, we are encouraging the questions to be submitted ahead of time, not to the 5 board members, but to the superintendent.
I'm
So
asking for
in-
discussion
Mr.
tonight.
Morgan, can you please once more advise on how we treat the consent agenda versus how we treat a regular agenda? And maybe give some color as to what other districts also do if we're trying to do something that is out of the ordinary here.
Okay.
Thank you.
As I've said, with a consent agenda, you don't have separate discussion of those items. If you want separate discussion, or any board member wants separate discussion, the appropriate method is to make a motion, and if there are 3 votes for that, then that's how that gets moved. And I think, to your point of wanting to have discussion, that's a decision the board as a body has to make, and so doing that with a motion and a vote is the appropriate procedural mechanism in order to bring that out and have discussion on a particular item. But absent a motion and a vote, the chair has the right to direct the meeting, and when items are on the consent agenda, is not required to allow separate discussion without having that item pulled out.
Thank you. So I'd like to take a vote on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes 3-2. We'll move on to vote on the athletic trainer contract. That was item F that was pulled out during our amendments to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the athletic trainer contract?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Springate,
Second.
a second by Ms. Glass. Any discussion on this one?
I'm
There's no
recusing
discussion
myself.
allowed.
This was pulled out of the consent agenda.
It's still in the consent agenda.
well,
There's no
that's
discussion
fine.
allowed, I think.
That's fine. All those in favor of the approving the athletic trainer contract?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Okay.
I'm sorry, just, Ms. McCown, did you just want to note for the minutes that you were absenting from that vote? Okay.
We noted in the proposed that you were abstaining, or?
No, that's fine. I'm sorry, I had overlooked that.
So should we note that 4-0 and 1
Abstention.
abstention? Okay, 4-0, 1 abstention. Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda item, can I have a motion to accept notification of personnel matters?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to accept notification of payment of bills?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler. Any discussion?
I've got a question about the payment of bills.
Sure.
I saw listed on there, it was the payment for Dinsmore of a $12,000, it was just a little over $12,000. I was wondering if we could get an understanding of what that is covering. Is that just for the month of July? Is it like a quarterly payment? I just was curious about how that breaks down.
That was for the service provided through the month of July, am I correct?
I believe so. I'd have to look at the invoices. Eric, since he's the official board attorney, does those. I'd be happy to clarify that. And, we provide, it's an itemized invoice with everything broken down into tenths of an hour.
Okay.
So I'm sure we can provide copies of that for the board if they'd like it.
Sure.
Certainly. And it'll have the invoice period on that as well.
That would be great.
Yeah, happily.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the July 24th, 2023 board meeting?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Brickler,
Second?
a second by Ms. McCowan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve the USDA mandated adult meal price adjustments?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second.
second by Mr. Brickler, I think. Any discussion on this? And just a note, I think on this one, we have zero give on this. This is mandated by the federal government, so I think that's important to note. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion to approve the school-based law enforcement officers, SBLEAs?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Brickler
Second.
and a second by Ms. McCowan. Do we want Mr. Wells or?
Good evening. Real quick, prior to a couple of years ago, if you were going to be an SRO in Kentucky, there were two pathways to that. One was to be employed by a local agency, such as our middle school and high school officers. The other was for the board to create their own department, and those officers were designated as SLEOs, S-L-E-O, or Special Law Enforcement Officer. And SLEOs are similar to UK Police, to State Park Police, where you're assigned a certain campus or a certain location for your jurisdiction. 2 years ago, I believe, the state legislature created another pathway to be an SRO, and that is the SBLEA, the School-Based Law Enforcement Officers, agencies. And so I'm going to let Mr. Sutton, Chief Sutton, talk a little bit about the advantages of potentially considering that option.
Good evening. One difference they call is a SLEO is commissioned. Every 4 years you must reapply and be approved by the state. For our district, it's not going to be a huge cost savings, but there will be some because we're set to come back up this spring. Like Fayette County Schools, I will say, did join this last year when it was created. For them, it's huge cost savings because you got to pay a fee to be recommissioned, which is, I don't understand that, but it is a small, minuscule part of what you have to do. You also have to reapply. It's an abridged version of the commission, but there is sometimes it's kind of been streamlined. It's been moved in the Justice Cabinet a few times. But my first commission, I was hired in April. I didn't get it till I was hired in August and didn't get my commission till April. So if there was that delay again, your commissions do expire by a date. If it does expire and you're still in the process of waiting to get something signed or get something paid, your law enforcement powers go away, you become a civilian, and you can work in the school, but you're basically there as a civilian personnel. So this would eliminate any chance of that happening. Once you're sworn as an officer, as long as you comply with all the state standards, which we all do and all have, we all currently meet. I've been doing this 28 years, and you have to be resworn again. That's one simplifying process of it. As far as jurisdiction and authority, one that kind of came to mind with the high school, if you notice the road, I was watching the maps when you think about it, the road that divides the high school and the middle school. Currently, our jurisdiction is literally the state. When they did this recommission and moved in the Justice Cabinet, their attorney wanted an exact physical address, 275 Schoolhouse Road. And so like for that road intervenes between the high school and middle school, an officer of the board, if I was there for something, working on something, if that's a public street, that road that divides the two, and there's a melee in the middle of the street, you're powerless. Now if they step on the school property on this side or the new school property on the high school side, you're back. This would eliminate that as well. So I think that's kind of one of the benefits of that one. I know Fayette County, while they're the biggest, oldest school-based agency out there, they switched. Our policy that I've written is copied word for word from their policy I've discussed with the board attorneys and Mr. Wells back in July. So that's kind of short of that one. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Are there any you shared some advantages, but are there any disadvantages?
No,
it sounds like it's just more convenient and
more
easier and maybe some cost savings for us
A
too.
little cost savings, again, not huge one, but
Right.
$200 every couple of years, it's $200 every couple of
Sure.
years. Other than that, it's a simple, last year when I was at the SRO conference, we first discussed, we already met all the criteria. We're sworn, we're POP certified. Most SLEOs are like if you're in the Frankfurt, the Treasury Cabinet, like I said, the Transylvania Police, the Railroad Police, that's even churches. The large church in Louisville has special local police. That's what the commission is. This is something they made it, maybe it's called a public agency now. And they granted the school boards the power to create that as of last year. So.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a couple questions. Is there a cost associated with
No,
this?
ma'am, this was actually a cost savings. There is no recommission fee. All we have to do is have a note. It can be just a regular notary, can swear us back in, and there's no application process to go through, no fees or nothing.
Okay. And then my second question is for Mr. Atkins. Mr. Atkins, has KSBA looked at the policy for us?
I'm not sure. I think we've had the attorney look at everything, but not KSBA.
And I believe Fayette County's policy that this policy is pulled from was taken from KSBA with KSBA input. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Officer Sutton. Thank you, Mr. Wells. And I think you guys are staying right there, right? Item E, can I have a motion to approve joining Backups Consortium of Law Enforcement Agencies?
So moved.
Second.
That was Ms. McCowan, and
Sorry,
a second by
allergies.
Ms. Glass. That's okay. All right, go ahead.
Any questions?
No, can you just give us a brief overview?
This kind of piggybacks off that as far as, I was trying, hypothetical scenario. An SRO is sitting at Southside Elementary, looked out the window, and the neighborhood connects right there. Sees a person stealing weed eaters in the backyard. We're not gonna go over and get involved in that. We're gonna be a good observer, call ourselves police, hey, there's a gentleman stealing some weed eaters. If they do by chance, hey, anyone got them available for 20 minutes, can you help us out, detain them or whatever, we could do something then. What this does do, if there's, heaven forbid, an intruder, if you see a person approaching the school property that's perhaps armed, but isn't quite on the property yet, that delay could be consequential by waiting to make phone calls, get approval, asking this, that. This is basically a pre-existing interlocal agreement. There's about 50 agencies in the state that use it. UK Police Chief is the one who oversees the program. We meet the criteria. It's approved by the Attorney General's office, the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council as well. Also, heaven forbid, there is an emergency. We need help from multiple agencies, Anderson County, Shelby County, they do participate, Nicholas or Jessamine County. I think everybody around us except for Fayette, those officers would come here and start, hey, same thing there. If they needed us, we could go there and help them out in that situation. It just eliminates that red tape of having to call somebody, and again, that's only for that exigent, serious, or risk of physical harm where that would come into place. If it's non-emergency, you would coordinate with those agencies ahead of time, say, hey, we need to go interview somebody on Troy Pike about something happening in one of the high schools or middle school or wherever it may be. But for that emergency situation, it would eliminate that process and could cause a delay.
Any cost associated
No,
with that
ma'am.
one?
No, no.
And you said the surrounding counties are all already?
I got a map. Like I said, everybody touches this except for Fayette. Forces it's up to those agencies to join. I can say Lexington and Fayette County do not, but every other county it touches, Woodford does participate.
Okay.
And there's like I said, probably almost 50 more across the state that join it.
Any other questions?
I will just say, this doesn't look like it involves any policy change. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, is that that's not a policy change. You're just joining the association.
Gotcha. And is there, are there any drawbacks or any reasons that folks wouldn't want to be
Not
part
that
of
I'm aware of. Again, this was developed by Georgetown's former chief, Chief Bossy. It's basically criminals don't know boundaries. They don't see that imaginary black line of what's school property and what's not. Again, we're not looking to go out and catch shoplifters at Kroger. That's not what this is about. This is
Well, yeah.
So that's kind of what that's.
And I think you guys, the attitude is just helpful community service,
Yes.
at least what I see from our SROs. I feel like we just saw, a really horrific thing happen, in Jacksonville. And, maybe if they were a part of this, if they had this there and they were a part of it, the officer might have been able to intervene instead of.
Where was a school or university police officer originally had an encounter, I can't say what it would prevent, I don't know all the details, but they did pass that off to additional agency. I don't know if they'd had that authority, would that have prevented that? I don't know the
Might not have,
details.
but I would be glad for us to
That's the scenario I'm
have it.
talking about, though, is instead of waiting and having to do all that, this is
Yeah.
that pre-existing agreement, just for those, again, where serious risk of injury or worse could happen.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item G, can I have a motion to approve the creation of positions?
So moved.
That was a motion by Ms. McCowan and a second by Ms. Glass. And I think we had one position. Is that right?
Yes, it's one position, and it's based on numbers of our special needs students that have increased at Simmons.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Oh, sorry. Do we, I guess, Ms. Francis? Oh, perfect. I'm so used to her being here, being able to answer things. So I guess that after school started, she saw the need that we had students that were in this classroom and needed this extra support for a LBD teacher.
That's correct.
What are we doing, like, in the meantime? I mean, how, is there a better way to streamline the process so the students don't have to wait month to meeting, or is there just nothing that can be done?
Right now, we're just over cap.
Okay.
So the state has caps for certain teachers, like an LBD teacher or MSD teacher. So right now, they're just over cap. So we need to hire another one to bring those down.
Okay. Well, if you can think of any way that can expedite that process so that, you know, I definitely don't want students to be in the room for, you know, weeks or even months while we're going through, you know, approval processes. I think we would all be more than willing.
We do our numbers in the spring, so we kind of know who's coming in, but we've had an influx of some children already with IEPs coming into our district, so it's pushed us over. So that's kind of where we sit right now.
Okay, well, if you can think of any way to streamline that or make that better for our students, especially the ones that have the highest need.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Our next item is for FY24 tax rates. So can we have a motion on tax rates?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we need to have an actual, so the motion has to read a specific way. I do have a motion.
Do you have it?
I
Because
would
it's not on
move.
here. Yeah. Okay.
No, I would make a motion. I would move to approve the 2023-2024 tax levy for Woodford County Public Schools as follows. Tax levy for the general fund, levy of 70.5 cents on real property, real estate, and 70.5 cents on personal/tangible property. A motor vehicle tax rate of 50.9 cents, watercraft rate of 50.9 cents, and aircraft tax rate of 50.9 cents. A 3% gross utility tax rate passed is my motion. That's my motion. And I can repeat it if anybody wants me to.
Second.
Okay, there was a second by Ms. Glass. Any discussion?
I did want to have some discussion. I don't know if
Sure.
other board members have anything they would like to say first. I'm happy to listen.
What's your questions or discussions?
First of all, I really think that this is typically done in September. So I think it would be surprising to most of our public that we're doing it in August. And then the second thing is, I just really fundamentally believe that the tax discussion should be had in a meeting where there's, you know, plenty of notice to folks, and it should be a separate kind of hearing as it has in the past. And then the meeting comes after, so it's not a separate date necessarily. It's just publicized and an actual hearing is held. I realize that KSBA or KDE, someone went back and looked and decided last year that it's not mandatory to have the tax information published in the paper as it has been in the past, and to have the meeting, the separate meeting. But I just fundamentally feel like our taxpayers are the ones paying these taxes. And, you know, I feel like the least we could do would be to have a hearing. The second thing is, I would say, we are sitting on a $10 million beginning balance, and at least 1.3 million of that was just excess money. Last year, we collected the taxes and we had 1.3 that we didn't spend. It was actually even more than 1.3 because we had a bond defeasance that is a one-time kind of expense. So if you look at reoccurring money, that 1.3 plus whatever was left from the bond defeasance, really is plenty of money to pay for the 5% raises that we approved. And there's absolutely been zero discussion about what this increased money would be for. or why we need it. So I think that just all of that, and plus with the motion, I'm not even sure people at the table understood what the motion meant exactly, and I'm quite certain probably the public didn't. And so I just really feel like, that's just how I feel from my heart.
Okay, so the motion was written exactly how it's been stated at least the years I've been on the board. I offered to restate it if you want me to, because it is a lot of words.
Just to
That's fine.
clarify,
That's fine.
there are three different kind of rates that we can go with. We can leave the rate, we can do a compensating rate, or we can do a maximum 4% growth rate. So I feel like usually when we talk about it to the public, we want to be, just kind of clear about which one we're picking.
And we actually can go above the 4%. That is what triggers the hearing and the separate meeting going above that 4%.
That would be like the nickel tax, and
Correct.
obviously, that's not
Correct.
one of the options that was
Correct.
proposed in the material.
So this rate would be taking the 4% increase in total taxes collected year over year. However, that's a 1.1% increase in taxes. So it's not a 4% increase in the actual tax itself, because assessments are rising, people are moving into the county, so that's a good thing. So it's a little misleading on the 4%. Because that is sort of an aggregate number.
What does it come to? Did you say 1 point?
It's 1.1% increase. So it's going from, the motion moves it from 69.697 cents to 0.705 cents.
And then just to
Correct,
clarify,
Mr.
it's a 4% increase.
Mr. Smith, it's a 4% increase in total revenue collected.
Correct.
Which is not a 4% increase in the tax rate.
Correct.
It is a 4%
Yeah.
increase in revenue collected, that is dollar for dollar.
Right,
It
so it's-
amounts to a 1.1% increase in actual tax rates, going from 69.7 cents to 70.5 cents. That's a 0.8 cent increase. Okay.
Right, but it's a 4% more
Increase
revenue.
in revenue,
And it's a
correct.
1 penny.
It is
or
less than a
than
penny.
1 penny.
Less than 1
Correct,
penny.
correct. So the percentage is 4% increase in growth, and that amounts to
And a
how
1
many
point-
dollars?
What is the dollar
Shane, can you-
on that? I think we put, there was.
He has the dollar amount as to what it would be per $100,000. I think it's $8 on a $100,000 property.
That's correct.
It was included.
It's $8 on per $100,000 of property, so a $500,000 piece of property would cost the taxpayer $40 annually. A $1 million piece of property would cost $80 annually.
And how much would that increase our dollar amount? So last year it was this amount. This
Yeah.
year with the 4% increase, it will be this amount. Could you discuss that, please?
Right, so on the handout that I attached, the revenue with the various rates, so our actual tax rate collection for FY '23 was $20,833,598. So the 4% growth rate would increase that by $1,461,336, and that's at an approximate 96% collection rate. That seems to be about what our collection rate is annually. And so, one of the questions was, like, what that's going to be spent on. And so I just want to remind everyone that we just passed those aggressive pay rate increases a couple of months ago, and that equated to approximately $2 million. And so if we remember that conversation, we showed what the surrounding districts are doing. We're still playing catch up in regard to most of those districts. And so that $2 million commitment that we did this year, that we were fortunate enough to do because we had the available revenue, if we want to continue to keep that momentum going, to be aggressive again next year with additional pay increases, and then again, I'm going to probably always say this, we have facility commitments that we've got to continue to be able to make moving forward. So if we did another equivalent raise to what we did this past year at $2 million, we're at a $600,000 deficit with this tax growth increase. And so it can't be both ways. We can't be aggressive from a pay standpoint, pay and benefit standpoint, and stand by and not take the growth rate from the tax standpoint.
And we're also seeing inflation, much as, everybody across the country, 7 to 10% a year. I mean, it's catching up with us too. So we have to keep that in mind as to what we spend as well.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, and I absolutely think that we need to be looking at raises and talking about raises. That would be a discussion I think we would have, before setting the rate at the maximum 4%. We would want to have discussion about what this would be for and how it would be utilized. But on the other hand, if you look at last year, we profited $1.3 million left over that's reoccurring money, plus the bond defeasance was $2 million, but we got reimbursed some of that. It was a one-time expense, so we clearly have the $2 million to pay for the pay increase that we did just voted on. That's already built into what we are collecting and what we will collect next year. And so I think my point is that the economy is really bad right now. People have it hard. Other agencies in Woodford County are not taking their maximum percent increases. And so, I think that we can absolutely meet our bills. We actually profited, $1.3 million added to the bottom line that we didn't spend. We just kind of banked it. And so I feel like, we have the money to pay for those raises. But I do understand what you're saying, that if you don't take the 4%, then you lose that forever. But on the flip side of that, if you do take the 4% increase, then folks are stuck paying that forever. And if there is a recession, or if there is a drop in housing prices, that can be a significant amount. If you look what happened in the mining districts, a 4% could be, raise you, 10, 20, 30 cents. And so I think you just have to kind of be careful looking at the long-term consequences, and really just be mindful that we collected enough to pay for this raise. We've got enough. It's reoccurring money. We're just sitting on it. So to me, it would make sense to to think about that and to be kind of balance the needs of taking the taxes with what we're actually spending and what we're using the money for. And then the other thing is just really, and I know it has nothing to do with you, but fundamentally I just believe there should be a hearing and an opportunity, and folks should know this is happening. Typically this happens in September, so I don't even know if it would be on anybody's radar. And again, I just think that would be, the fairest thing to do.
And we did have a hearing last year, right? In September?
We did. I don't, Ms. Cooper, what was the date of the tax hearing last year? Do you remember? While she's doing that, Mr. Smith, if you want to respond.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I just want to remind everyone that approximately $1 million of that ending fund balance came from that general fund reimbursement. So I'm not sure that I'm in agreement that we revenue cash flowed $1.3 million more than our expenses last year. Some of that, approximately $1 million, came from that general fund reimbursement, and that is not reoccurring money, so we just have to keep that in mind. And then, before the September meeting, we'll have to look at our working budget for FY23, and so I'll be able to make some changes because we did have a little bit better ending balance than I projected at our tentative budget that we were going to have. And as I remind everyone again, I budgeted that very conservatively. But if you look at how the $2 million raises affected our contingency and dropped that number down, I don't think we're going to be significantly better off necessarily than we were the prior year as far as the way the cash flow works out. So I think we're going to be in approximately the same position. And then this growth rate increase will help us be able to continue to do the things that we need to do. And then again, just the facility needs that are going to, we keep talking about the middle school is going to have a $500,000 roof replacement. Well, emergency pop up from time to time as we're getting ready to talk about a roof repair. So, we have to keep contingent funds available for these emergencies until we restore our bonding capacity. And so we just always have to keep that top of mind. That is the only pool of money that we have to help with some of these, issues that pop up. So, and then the only other point I would make, we have this hearing typically, or have had the hearing in the past, if I remember correctly, we have 45 days from the time the certification comes out in the past, and we've had to have special meetings around that to be able to hit those advertising deadlines that we've done in the past. And so that's the reason we changed the meeting structure this year, is those hearings are no longer required, those advertisements are no longer required. We wanted to get it in because it's much easier for me to adjust the working budget that's due at the September meeting if I know what the tax rates are going to be in August. So
Last year, I think the meeting was September 1st.
yeah,
The special call was September 1st, I
I
think.
think we're pretty close to what typically happens on that. So.
Well, just a couple things. I think sometimes when you get up and speak and when we hear things at meetings, maybe sometimes we at the table don't always hear the same thing. So just to be very clear, the beginning budget last year was about 9.3 million. This year it's 10.6. And so that 1.3 million, that's what I'm talking about. It does, in fact, account for the bond defeasance that was a little over 2 million, but we got reimbursed about $1 million or so. So it accounts for that. So I just want to be really, really clear. The other thing is the contingency, I agree, we're maxed out. We can't borrow any money. We have maxed our bonding capacity for a 30-year bond. That I don't know that anyone has ever done that or has done that since, any other county. So I understand we have to have money to be able to do repairs and replacements, and I get that. The contingency is required to be 2% by the state, and so we are, do you have any idea what our contingency at 10 million, a little over 10 million is?
I don't know exactly what the $10 million number, I know.
It's our beginning balance.
If I remember, I understand that. If I remember correctly, the contingency the prior year was $7.5 million. That's about 10%, and that's really where it needs to be, because that's only approximately 6 weeks of operating expenses, and that's not a lot if you start analyzing the numbers. So hopefully nothing would ever happen that would cause that to be an issue, but it's still not a lot of operating expense.
Last year, we were 5 times what the state mandates for the contingency, and I'm all for a healthy contingency, but that was around 7 million, you say, and this year we started with a $10.5 million budget. So I'm guessing that's going to be significantly over 10%.
Well, that's not what's budgeted in the tentative budget for the contingency after the raises are taken into effect. That it was $7.50 approximately at the end of FY '22. I think I had to reduce that in the next year tentative budget without knowing what the tax rates were going to be. That number is significantly lower than $7.5 million.
And again, not to belabor the point, but we're beginning the year with over $10 million, which last year we profited at least 1.3 from the beginning balance to the beginning balance, and then when you factor in that bond defeasance extra one-time thing, I mean, we're banking quite a bit of money at the end of the year, just extra tax dollars just kind of sitting there. Contingency is required to be 2%. I agree, it should be more, but and it would be interesting to know what that $10 million, what that puts us at.
But if you do the math on the $10 million, he just said the raise for this year would be $2 million, which we haven't paid any out, which would bring the contingency back to 8, or our beginning fund back to 8 million. Then when you look at...
We're talking about doing an increase in taxes. If we left it flat, what that would be versus taking the 4%, what that would be.
But we don't collect those, we'll collect those through the spring. So those funds won't be available to us immediately. It would be over a 3 to 4 month period. So to pay out that raise would be $2 million of that $10 million, if that's what the number is.
Well, we pay it out each month in salary, so it's yeah.
That's right, and we've not paid any of it yet.
Yeah.
Starting, we had July.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. You know, again, I just feel like we're not a bank, and when we take tax dollars, we should be spending that in the schools on the students. And, you know, when we have a significant leftover of millions of dollars, then we should give the taxpayers a break.
Can I say something too? Sure. So when I first started paying attention to board meetings years ago, it was right before the nickel tax. And I know that there was kind of a process of not raising the taxes each year because they were trying to get the nickel tax passed. And I went to all the meetings and I saw the hardship that actually created on the district, and they weren't able to give raises. They weren't able to do certain things because they were trying to give the breaks in order to get the nickel tax passed for the high school, and then that didn't happen. So the district was kind of in a hole for a while, and we're still in the process of getting out of that hole to an extent. And I don't want the fact that we are currently at a healthy fund level to go against us, because it's really easy to get out of that good position. Probably 2 years, you could get out of that good position really quickly. So I think it makes sense, and one of the reasons I like having these numbers, and that was kind of explained, is it's an $8 increase on every $100,000 of property assessment. So if you have a $300,000 house, that's $24 over a year period that your taxes are going to increase. So I think we really need to understand what the actual impact is versus, and really what that impact is to each individual household, but what it does for the entire district, for the almost 4,000 students, the almost 600 employees that we can really use that money for. I think it's really important to understand how important it is to include this in our budget, going forward, because we might be in a good spot right now, but we might not be in a year. We might not be in 2 years. And I want to make sure that we continue to be in a good place in Woodford County to do the things we need to do to retain, to recruit, to support the students and the staff. So that's kind of where I stand on this.
I agree with you, Mr. Brickler, and I think the other thing that we have to consider is when we weren't taking those increases, we were very severely neglecting our facilities. And we are going to have to spend money on those facilities. And to stand here today and make Mr. Smith say, I'm going to spend every dollar on this maintenance project or this maintenance project is not realistic, but to understand that we have some real needs that are not being met, that we can maybe make a dent in with some of this is also very, very important.
Mr. Smith, when you're talking about not only the raises that we need to be mindful of, but also issues with facilities, I know you said a roof on the middle school. What are the other facility potential expenses? Because I know we got the local planning committee together, and there were going to be recommendations, so I'm not really sure what are we talking about?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the district facility plan is part of that. We're still finishing that up. There's some work being done with the different programs that could potentially be utilized in the vocational area. School of Innovation, I believe, is what the term is coined. Mr. Asher can speak a little bit more intelligently than I about that, but that's kind of where we're at with the district facility plan as far as repurposing this building at some point. But you guys talked earlier about Mr. Green. No one works more closely in this district than I do with Mr. Green about all the facility requirements that go on. And so, I concur that there's probably a period of time that went by for a few years that things were maybe band-aided together to try to keep them going, and we've gotten to a point on some of the needed infrastructures, i.e. air conditioners, i.e. roofs, i.e. windows leaking, et cetera, that we're going to have to spend some dollars to get those things taken care of, so that we have not only top-notch folks as far as teaching staff and all those, but we have top-notch facilities, because I think those things have to go hand in hand if we want to be a top-notch school district. And so I could get a list together. My mind is drawing blank, but we started putting together a 3-year, 5-year plan, because obviously we can't spend, or fix all those things in year one. But just as an example, a pump station at Southside Elementary goes out in the spring. We spend $50,000 to get that fixed. Was that in a budget anywhere? No, it wasn't. We didn't know that thing was going to go out. And so, there's just several of those things, and so we don't ever know when they're going to come up.
The gym issue that we certainly didn't expect. They shut the top of it down, and for us to be able to use it, that was almost $400,000, I think. Yeah.
Came from contingency?
Yeah.
Well, and again, I do appreciate that. I just want to say, just in closing, the compensating rate, if we took that, it would lower the tax rate for folks down to 67.8 cents, and we would still collect $600,000. And so, that really, in closing, I would say that. And then just a tangent, but was the district facilities plan due to the state at some point in June or July?
So I guess that's another statute that got revised. That is no longer a required deadline, according to KDE folks. So we're hoping to get that finalized by October, November, but it did not have to be. I think I probably did say that early on, not realizing the statute had been changed, because it did used to be the state board, I think, met in August, and so, but that no longer applies, so.
And I've just got one more thing too before we vote. I think, last year when I was running for this seat, I talked to a lot of people, and taxes, there were lots of things that were important to them, but raising taxes was one thing that I heard from a lot of folks over and over again. And even though it may not seem like much to some people, it does impact people. It's significant for some people. And so I want to be mindful of that as well, because just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? So I'll reread the motion, just so we're all clear on what we're voting for. The motion is to approve the 2023-2024 tax levy for Woodford County Public Schools as follows. For the general fund tax levy of 70.5 cents on real property / real estate and 70.5 cents on personal / tangible property, a motor tax vehicle rate of 50.9 cents, a watercraft rate of 50.9 cents, and an aircraft tax rate of 50.9 cents. This also includes a 3% gross utility tax rate. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 3-2. Item I is can I have a motion to expedite emergency roof repairs? I'm not going to read this whole thing out.
So moved.
So, I'm sorry, who?
So moved.
Ms. Springate?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Mr. Smith, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. As Mr. Atkins alluded to at the very beginning of the meeting, so this is in regard to the March 3rd windstorm that we had. As we've talked about, we passed an emergency declaration back in the spring to be able to get this project started. It's taken an inordinate amount of time with our insurance company to get this resolved. They've sent adjusters out about 3 different times to look at. But what essentially is going to happen is we're going to get Southside Elementary, Huntertown Elementary, essentially completely re-roofed. And so the insurance proceeds are going to be $1,513,369. After working with Mr. Hughes at Ross Torrent, we put together a BG1, which is attached for your review, with the construction costs, the contingency, the architect fees, and the other inspection fee that's on there. It's going to put the total at $1,583,104. So that puts about another $70,000 out of the general fund to take care of this roofing issue. So the motion, I emailed Mr. Ferris and Mr. Morgan, because we're still waiting on construction documents from the 2 companies, Escola and Trimco. We just got the insurance information Thursday afternoon, so we didn't want to wait until the September meeting, because as he mentioned earlier, we're afraid we're going to get into some bad weather, possibly in the fall. This is going to take quite a bit of time to get these roofs put on, so we wanted to get this process started, and the recommended motion was to go ahead and approve the BG1, to approve the A1A contract with Ross Torrent, to start getting their drawings together, everything that's needed to do the actual construction piece, and then as we get the construction documents from Escola and Trimco, to authorize the board chair and the superintendent to execute those documents so that we don't delay that process.
Are there any questions on this?
Yes.
You go ahead.
What was our deductible on this?
I believe our deductible is $10,000, if I remember correctly.
And is that included in the $70,000 general fund costs?
No.
Okay. And then the other question is, since it's just an insurance claim and a roof replacement, is there any way to not have to pay the architect $100,000?
No, and Mr. Hughes might be able to better talk about that, but it's required by KDE because they're, just like the BG1 is required, there's a lot of,
It's a percentage, basically, of whatever the total cost of the project is, and that's set by KDE.
Right, I was just wondering, and I know on new construction and on renovations, but this is
Yeah.
like a storm damage.
Yeah,
And so
that'd be great.
I just,
well,
I'm sure
there's
Mr.
several things, insulation requirements have to be brought up to code because when the building's built, the insulation code was a certain level, and with any type of storm damage like this, it's a requirement to be brought up to code. So that's where Mr. Hughes and Ross Hart come in. They have to tell everybody what those codes are and what has to be done to make the building spec out to where it needs to be, and all the roof intricacies about how to flash it properly. And he's helping protect us so that a roofer doesn't get up there and do something incorrectly that in a year we have a roof leak or whatever. So that's sort of why that architect fee is there.
well, I understand, I just thought since it was a natural disaster and a insurance claim, maybe that would be something that was not, absolute 100%. The other question I have is, so we have the kind of letters attached. Is this something that was bid or has to be bid, or what happens because I know it's an insurance claim, I don't know if that changes things?
Yeah, so passing the emergency declaration that was approved back in the spring bypasses the bidding option.
That's what we did with the high school as well, if you'll recall. We did that with the high school.
Yeah, bypassed the bidding requirement. However, we did get 3 quotes for the roofing services at Southside, which if you look at the numbers, Huntertown is approximately $300,000. Southside was a little over $1 million, so that's a much larger project. We did get 3 bids, quotes on that, and Escola was the cheapest one, so we went with the low
Okay,
bidder
so
on that.
I probably need to amend my motion then. So for Southside, it's going to be, do we have to pull it out and say which company, or is it okay just to have the motion to approve it overall, and then you just pick the one?
Well, we're picking the lowest price. Escola's the lowest, so that's who we're choosing.
Does
So
the
this
motion need
was
to
put
reflect that, or
together.
no?
Sorry.
Does the motion need to reflect the name of the company, or no? It's fine just to do the BG1?
According to Mr. Ferris and Mr. Morgan, the motion where it talks about the construction documents most responsive to the quotes listed, which is what I provided here.
Okay, well, let me redo my motion. I would like to withdraw my motion. Who was the second?
Ms. Gomez?
Will you withdraw so we can do a new motion?
What?
I need to do a motion reading what it says specifically, because a motion just to do whatever isn't sufficient. It needs to say these words, because it's a different contractor and there are different things. So the motion just needs to be revised. So I have to withdraw my motion, and then the second has to withdraw their second so that we can do a new motion.
Why does it have to be revised?
I think that's correct. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she's saying she wants to make the motion more specific about what's being approved and what's being authorized. And I think that's appropriate, yeah.
Because I didn't read the whole thing.
Okay, sure, I'll rescind my second.
Okay. So I would make a motion to expedite emergency roof repairs at Huntertown and Southside schools. The board is requested to approve the presented BG1 and A1A contracts for the repairs, and authorize the board chair and superintendent to execute the BG1, A1A contracts, as well as the pending construction contract documents most responsive to quotes solicited and falling within the budgeted amount of $1,583,104.23.
Should that
Representing?
motion also say the middle school? Because that's not included in this? Because I know we have some damage at the middle school too.
The middle school is only about $8,000. We have several, so your question about the deductible is being met through the down trees, the $8,000 roof repair at the middle school.
Okay,
all those
gotcha.
little things, so yeah.
And then the only addition is just to make it very clear that it's going to be paid for with insurance proceeds plus $69,734.60 from the general fund.
It's a motion by Ms. Springate,
Second.
second by Ms. Glass. Any further discussion?
I would like to say the beauty of that approval is that at this time next year, we'll have 3 schools with brand-new roofs of our 7. Of our 7 schools, 3 of them will have brand-new roofs. So that's big.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. No discussion items.
I have a discussion. Do we have to have specific criteria for the discussion item, or is it just board member discussion?
So you should submit those to us for inclusion on the agenda,
Okay.
right? That,
I didn't know that because I feel like before we've been able to discuss things at the end of the meeting if we had.
no, the discussion items are always, we have specific items for discussion. So that's where we had like the safety talks at one point was under discussion, but those are always specified there. There's information items written only, other business. Is there a point that somebody could bring anything up that not on the agenda?
Would it be other business?
Yeah, I think if there was something else requiring a vote, you'd bring it up under other business. I think it's correct that the discussion items you submit ahead of time as part of the agenda setting process.
This may be other business, then I'm not sure.
That we have to vote on?
We need to do something. It's for the performance plan that we've been emailing about, so that we can let Mr. Adkins know what it is that we would like for him to, where we would like for him to focus his efforts this next year.
Okay.
Since we're coming up on September.
Yep. So I don't think that would be an action in open meeting, I don't think. But I think that in the email from Mr. Atkins with those additional goals that he had set out, he had asked for some feedback. So if all of that has been provided to him, has that been provided to him?
I wasn't really sure what the process was, and I'd emailed you a couple of times asking about that, so I just sent it to you. I didn't know if we were supposed, because I feel like it needs to come from the board instead of individuals. This is what Sarah wants me to do, this is what Adam wants me to do, this is what, I feel like as a board, collectively, we should, because we do have a policy that
I might
provides
have
that we
missed
would
that email.
review that expectations with the superintendent prior to implementing the plan.
Yeah, I think that what the purpose was, and I thought this was in the email, maybe I'm wrong, Mr. Atkins put forth 3 additional goals based on his performance review from this past year. We were going to provide him with feedback on those goals. Once he had them, everybody's feedback gained, then we would meet to review them. I think that would be in closed session, and then come out and vote to approve those.
Okay. I mean, because that wasn't clear. I'm not sure what we were supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't think we would meet to set them and then have him go back and read them again or do something again and then keep meet. I think if we all give feedback via email, set one meeting when he's got all of his feedback, and then we can do the executive session to review in detail with him the final, what that's going to look like, and then we can come out and vote on it. And that can be at the next meeting, right?
So I almost wonder, to me, it seems strange that each of us would email him back with our own points. I would think that as a board, we would discuss everything first and then present that to Mr. Adkins. Like we would, maybe we can't do open meetings. So we would, maybe we would send everything to you to compile, and then we'd have a special meeting to discuss everything we put together independently. And then as a board, we would narrow that down maybe, or compile it and then present it to Mr. Adkins. I'm literally asking because I'm not sure what that
Absolutely.
process is.
So the statute allows your preliminary discussions about that goal setting and all that, even just amongst the board, to happen in closed session. So what you could do is have a closed session to set what those specific goals are going to be as a board without Mr. Adkins present, and then you could have a subsequent meeting to present those discussions to him.
Okay.
And if it would be helpful, I'd be glad to put together something in writing and kind of lay out what that process is under the statute and when the closed sessions are permitted for the superintendent evaluation, if that would be helpful for everyone.
Because Mr. Atkins has already given us some additional goals that he was looking for some feedback on. So, I mean, I don't care if we want to have a special meeting to review those together. I don't know, quite honestly, is there a difference between each of us giving him the feedback versus everybody giving it to me? me writing it out and giving him all that feedback to get, I guess I'm not quite sure.
I guess I would think we wouldn't give him any feedback until we met as a board, would be my thought. Like, we would all put everything together as a board and then present it to him once we all agree on what we want to give him, instead of our independent thoughts and ideas.
That's what I was thinking too.
I don't know, is that, I'm gonna lean on you a little bit there.
Yeah.
Is that kind of normal? Like, what is normal? Maybe I'm totally off base on
Yeah,
that.
no, and I'm pulling up the policy just to make sure
Yeah.
I don't misspeak, but I think the policy does contemplate the board coming up with, rather than feedback from each board member, a collective feedback and a collective message, and then presenting that to the superintendent. And I think that's reflected in the superintendent's contract as well. So I think what you've outlined there is have an initial meeting as a board, come up with that feedback through a closed session, then you can present that feedback as a collective. That way it's not a compilation of, your individual thoughts, but it's a message as a board. Does that make sense?
That's fine, it's just different than what we had originally, he had come up with some additional goals, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And I think you all can then take those goals and discuss them and how
I think
you
that-
envision them being put into
That I
place.
think is
that-
important,
okay.
that I think that we take Mr. Adkins' input. It can't just be 5 people just
Absolutely.
adding a bunch of different stuff to, a performance plan. So I feel like it's important that we take his input in that as a start to the discussion, which is, I guess, why we were doing it the way we were doing it. But
Oh, yeah, and
we
I did
can-
not mean to suggest that you.
No,
that you
no,
were doing
no,
it, so.
that's fine. What we can do, we can take those goals that Mr. Adkins has given us in writing, and we can set a special meeting, executive session to review those, and discuss those. That's perfectly fine. Do we want to do that before the next meeting? Do we want to, do it sooner than that?
If we're having a special meeting to talk about what Mr. Ratliff, can we discuss both of those things? Can we cover both of those things so we don't have to meet so many times?
What's the special meeting?
Well, Mr. Ratliff was saying.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
For the
okay.
track.
So that would be
Yes.
an opportunity
We
sooner
can-
rather than later.
Yeah, we can add an executive session on to literally any meeting that we have.
Since
So
that's only
it
one
doesn't
topic that we're
matter.
voting on for that would be an open session, and then we could do.
It
an
would just
executive.
have to, the agenda would reflect that.
Yeah.
It would reflect that we would have the need for the executive session.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. We can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as all of those items are included on the special meeting notice and the agenda, then yeah, you can include those on the same meeting. That shouldn't be a problem.
Yep. So I guess what we'll do is we'll wait to see when he was going to be able to have that meeting and have all that information. If it's sooner than the next board meeting, we'll do it then. If it's later than the next board meeting or at the next board meeting, we'll do it at the next board meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any other items for tonight? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Glass,
Second,
second by Ms. McCowan. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.